Hi everyone, and welcome back to ArtSpot Online, the online version of the free weekly art making program at the Tampa Museum of Art, where we learn about a work of art on view and then make something inspired by it. Today we're going to learn about this black figure amphora from ancient Greece, and we're going to learn step by step how to draw this lotus pattern that you see up top that you'll find on a lot of ancient Greek pottery. So this is an amphora from around the year 515 BCE. An amphora is a vessel used for storing lots of different products, both liquid and dry, but mostly for storing things like wine and olive oil. Usually the contents of an amphora would be poured out rather than scooped out, and you can see there's no lid or anything, so the contents would have been protected back in the day by a perishable top, like a cork. Amphora were also given as prizes during athletic events. They had uses in rituals, but for the most part they were used as basically like tableware. They're meant to be seen, so they were decorated by painters. So we call this a black figure amphora, of course, because the figure, in this case a sphinx, is painted in solid black, with the details scratched into the surface while the paint, quote unquote, used to paint it, which is actually slip, right, a mixture of water and clay. Those details are scratched into that slip while it's still wet. This amphora features a sphinx, like we said, which is a monster from ancient Greek mythology that guarded the entrance to the city of Thebes. And it would ask the same riddle to anybody who came by, this very famous riddle, which was, what goes on 4 legs at dawn, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? If the traveler could not solve the riddle, they were cursed to die. So since the sphinx is associated with the dead and death, an amphora like this could have been used to store the ashes of a deceased person in their tomb. At the top of this amphora is an abstract lotus flower pattern. It sort of looks like a budding lotus flower that you could find in a pond, but it actually represents a mythological plant from Greek mythology, right? So we have this mythological creature and this mythological plant life. So as the story goes, there's a group of people living on an island dominated by what was called a lotus tree. So the quote, lotus fruits and flowers, which were the main sources of food on the island, were also a narcotic, causing the inhabitants to sleep in peaceful apathy all day instead of dealing with practical concerns. So this kind of a flower design is decorative and beautiful, but it also would be this luxurious reminder of that same kind of indulgence and pleasure. So we're going to learn step by step how to draw this lotus pattern. It looks really fancy and complicated at first, but once you break it down into a couple of steps, it's pretty easy to create this design that you can just repeat on and on into infinity. So let's go. So step 1 is we're going to draw a row of kind of these like raindrop shapes. So you want to start by drawing this curvy raindrop, okay? And you want to continue that line and start to create kind of like the shape of a head. So we have a raindrop pointing down and then a head shape pointing up. And as you continue this arc, you're going to start to swoop back down and just make another raindrop shape. And you can make as many of these as you want to fill up your paper. But the main thing to remember during this first step, which is the trickiest step, it's going to get way easier after this. But the main thing to remember during this first step is that in kind of the neck of these head shapes, right, in the space between the raindrops, you want to be able to fit another one of those raindrops. Okay, so you don't want to space the raindrops too close together. You don't want to space them too far apart. You want that space to be just big enough to fit another raindrop shape in during our next step. So once we have this row of raindrops and heads, the next step is to basically do the exact same thing. You just want to start a little bit to the right. So start by making another raindrop in that first neck space of the head, and then do the exact same step that we did in step 1. So you'll have these 2 overlapping patterns of raindrops and heads. So that's by far the trickiest part. The main thing to pay attention to is the height of the heads. You want them all to be about the same height. You don't want this second layer of heads to be lower or taller than the first one. You want the tops of all those heads to be basically the same exact height. So again, the hard part is done. Now all we need to do is take these raindrops, trace the curve that we already have, and then create a pointy top to each of these raindrop shapes. Once you've done that, we're then going to add some petal shapes to the raindrops. So just a little almond shape on each side to sort of show the petals starting to spread. Then you're just going to draw a little circle underneath each of these buds. It's basically like the calyx of the plant. And then you're going to draw some curves that kind of mirror the curves at the top of the design. So you're just going to make just a smiley face shape, starting from this bud, skipping a bud, and then connecting it to this bud that's, 2 buds down. Go to that next bud, do the same thing, and you'll get these overlapping arcs. The last step is, I guess these are leaves, maybe they're seeds, but you want to make these little trios of dots in these spaces to the left and right of each of those calyxes, and then you're done. So this is like the meander pattern we learned in the first episode of this series, that you can just continue on and on forever. If you want an extra challenge, you can, make another one of the cardboard tube sculptures like we made a couple episodes back, and try to create this pattern on that curved surface so that it connects all the way across, so that there's no beginning and no end to this, complicated pattern. But yeah, now you have another fancy doodle in your toolbox. The next time you see somebody draw a pointy S or a cool S, bust out this Lotus pattern, you'll totally blow their minds. Alright, that's Art Spot for this week. Thank you so much for learning and making with the Tampa Museum of Art. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes, and I'll see you next week.